If you remember, this is my 2007 Chevy Tahoe LTZ. I have had this for about a year now, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. So I'm gonna be going through what I do like, what I don't like, and everything that you need to know about this SUV if you're looking to buy it. Now, as a quick reminder, my Tahoe has the 5.3 liter V8 engine, and I have a little bit over 156,000 miles on it now. Now, this engine makes about 320 horsepower and 340 pound-foot of torque, and it is mated to a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, these are based on a rear-wheel drive platform. Mine does have an automatic 4-wheel drive system that can actually kick on its own whenever it feels like it needs it. But you can also manually turn it on to 4-wheel drive as well. Now, the interior of this Tahoe is a light gray color. This is a 3-row model, and then the exterior is a dark blue metallic. Now, before we get into what I do and don't like about this Tahoe, let's talk about the modifications that I have done on it. I'm of course going to be doing full reviews for these modifications for a 1-year review on each of them as well. So make sure to check out the comments as I build them out. Now, each of the 5 modifications we're going to be talking about that I have done to this Tahoe in the last year were gifted to me by RealTruck, so make sure to check out the links down in the comments if you are wanting to get one of these modifications for yourself. So first up is this Rhino Rack X-Tray. This is the large version, obviously, because this is a large SUV. I will say of all the modifications I've added, I think this might be one of the first ones I'm going to swap out at some point. It is a great product, but it's just not quite what I'm looking for right now. Next up are these AVS in-channel rain guards. I also did this Armadillo blackout grille that I have really liked so far. It was a pain to install, but ever since installing, I have really liked it. And then the last exterior modification are these Anzo switchback headlights. They are expensive, but they are really nice. And then the final thing I've added to the Tahoe since buying it is this Husky floor mat here. As you can see, it is picking up a ton of grime and dirt. And as you can see, it's also hiding my terrible carpeting as well, of which you will also find it in the second row as well, and the cargo area too. I should probably also mention that I did get this MagSafe car mount as well. However, that was not sent out to me by RealTruck and was gifted to me by my wife. All right, so let's go ahead and get into what I do and I do not like about this Tahoe. And first things up are what I do like. And I think the thing I like the most about it is honestly the way it looks. I am a huge fan of the way these Tahoes look. It was a huge jump forward when it came out in 2007. The design was heavily modernized over the last generation, and I really like this dark metallic blue color. I think it makes it look like it's a lot newer than it is, especially since I think this generation went through the 2014 model year, and let's be completely honest, not much changed in the next gen. Another feature that I didn't realize I was going to use so much has to be this automatic tailgate. Again, for 2007, this feature right here was pretty revolutionary, and not a ton of vehicles, especially in the kind of more standard vehicles like this one, had it at the time. Next up is actually something that I talked about a little bit earlier, and that is actually the automatic 4-wheel drive system. So you can actually switch this dial over right here to automatic 4-wheel high, 4-wheel low, and then 2-wheel drive. I keep it on automatic quite a bit just because it actually does a really good job when I'm driving at shifting between the 4-wheel drive and staying in 2-wheel drive. So I'm super efficient. I don't get the hopping or anything like that unless I actually need that traction. Next up is the sunroof. I've been really impressed with it. I haven't had all that many vehicles out there with a sunroof, but being able to open and close it easily has been really nice. And the functionality of being able to pull it all the way back as well as just tilt it up whenever you want is a pretty cool feature. And this is something I've actually used a lot. Another thing I've been finding myself using a little bit more than I expected is the heated seats. I have found them to work really well. I don't think the heating element actually works in the driver's seat. However, the back does, and it does get hot. That said, I do wish it had a heated steering wheel, which it doesn't have, but that's easy to get over. Something else I have been impressed with the front end is just how much room the driver has. I have plenty of leg room. It's super comfortable to sit in, and I've had no problems there. Same goes for actually the second row. I have plenty of headroom. I have plenty of shoulder width and that kind of stuff. There's plenty of room in the second row, but we'll get into the third row in a second. And then the final thing I really like about this Tahoe is honestly the way it drives, both in the powertrain, the power delivery, but also the suspension and how it goes around corners is quite impressive, but I'm gonna go into that a little bit later. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into the things that I don't like. And these couple things have actually made me consider selling this Tahoe to get another vehicle. Now, of course, there are some minor issues that just kind of come with wear and tear, some paint, dings, and the door up front creaks when it opens. However, I want to talk a little bit more about fundamental issues that will affect you. And the first one really comes down to gas mileage. This vehicle gets around 14 miles to the gallon combined. And when it's compared to something like our 2013 Ford Explorer that we also have, that actually is pretty poor, and so we find us driving the Explorer quite a bit more, kind of because of that reason. But the reason I'm sitting in the back here is actually because of this rear end. I think is the biggest weak point of the Chevy Tahoe of this generation. Now, I've talked about this in a past video, however, after a year, it just continues to be an issue. So this is actually a 3-row SUV, and as you can see right here, these are the 3rd row. They're folded up instead of into the floor like you see nowadays. However, the issue that happens is it takes up a ton of the cargo room in here to fold them up forward. And then cargo room gets even worse when you want to use that 3rd row. So when you fold them down, there isn't really room for much of anything. And considering how large this SUV is, that's kind of sad to me. And especially when you compare it to something like our Ford Explorer that I mentioned earlier, it has considerably more cargo room that is much more usable because the 3rd row folds into the floor, unlike folding up like these. Now, I feel like I could excuse the terrible cargo room if the 3rd row occupants were comfortable. However, that also just isn't the case. Unlike most 3rd row SUVs, there isn't any place for your legs to go down into. Instead, they're just sitting on the flat load floor of the cargo area. So someone like me who is 6'1" has their knees basically up into their face. There isn't much legroom to the seats in front of us. So ultimately, even though this is a massive 3-row SUV, the 3rd row is very comparable to something much, much smaller. That also probably has better gas mileage. So what are my plans moving forward with this Chevy Tahoe? My plans right now are to continue fixing it up. I want to use this as a platform to review products and show you guys all the awesome things that you can be getting for your vehicles. So it's things like I need a new front bumper because I actually have a hole in the front. And then I also want to do things like fixing up the paintwork, fixing dents, and just kind of cleaning this vehicle up in general. But I wouldn't be doing those things if I was planning on selling this Tahoe. So that brings me to my next question of, is this a vehicle that I'm going to hang on to, even though it has issues like I talked about before? And the answer is yes. For the price of under $10,000, and prices are continuing to go down as our market adjusts, it really brings a really good value to it. There's a lot of really cool features that only newer and more expensive SUVs have, like that automatic tailgate, heated seats, and even that automatic 4-wheel drive system. And it also drives really nicely, which we're gonna go ahead and get into right now. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about driving my 2007 Chevy Tahoe LTZ. I talked about how this is actually one of my favorite aspects of this Tahoe, and I think it's actually because it surprises me so much at how good it drives. So I am used to pickup trucks, but I also am used to SUVs. I've driven some cars recently, and I'm always really surprised when I get into this Tahoe at how well it drives, how well it takes turns, and that kind of stuff. I don't know why it is. This actually does have the passive suspension in the back. It originally did have the air ride suspension in the rear, but it was swapped out for the passive when I bought it from the dealership. So the suspension itself in the rear isn't even meant for this vehicle. So taking turns as well as this thing does, it really doesn't. I'm just really surprised by it. I do also want to talk about the powertrain. So this does have the 5.3 liter engine in it. It does have a 320 horsepower. I've been really impressed with the power delivery. I have no problem passing. I have no problem going up hills. It actually is plenty of power, even though this is such a large SUV. Of course, all that does translate to a way worse gas mileage. 14 miles to the gallon is not great. I do have a lot of other things I do want to do to this SUV, so I actually have some new tires on the way right now. I'm going to be doing a video once I get them in. I'm not saying what they are because I actually ordered some other tires and they are on an indefinite back order, so I actually had to have those canceled and order some new tires. So I'm waiting till those get in to be able to talk a little bit more about that. I do have a lot of other stuff going on with this SUV that I'm really excited about, and I'm hoping to find some other good sponsors to help me out with continuing the build on this Tahoe. So after a year of ownership of this vehicle, I'm excited to say I'm going to continue owning it. I think it's a great SUV and I've really enjoyed it so far. And I think honestly at this point, the only way I would sell it is if I could get a major upgrade over this SUV. It's a great SUV. If you're looking at getting one, I really do think it is a fantastic value. As long as you're not planning on having anyone in the 3rd row for long periods of time and you're not too terribly worried about the rear cargo area in comparison to some other vehicle size. So if you found this review helpful, make sure to subscribe and like this video. And if you want to watch the video of when I originally bought it, I'm leaving a card up on the screen right now.